Um, Today's resume development quick little summary will be kind of a truncated version of the 2-hour class I gave Friday or last Thursday. Please keep an eye out on the Federal Executive Board's LinkedIn and Facebook pages for future full resume development classes. These classes are typically general enough to count for any agency that you would be applying to. However, there are some specific things that I have changed specifically for the hiring for the agencies that we have participating in today's events. As Sarah discussed, my name is Brock Young. I am the Deputy Director of the San Francisco Federal Executive Board. I retired from the United States Army in 2021 after a 24-year career in both the active duty Army as well as the AGR program within the California National Guard. I am a military to civilian success story. A lot of that has to do with Sarah and the San Francisco Federal Executive Board, as well as the SkillBridge program. I was a SkillBridge intern. I was the first Federal Executive Board SkillBridge intern. Come to find out, we weren't supposed to do that, but hey, I win. And now I'm here. My first job out of the military was with the EPA, so that seems to be where Sarah and I both come from. In addition, yes. So Sarah has discussed what the FEBs are throughout the country. However, one of the things we do assist agencies do is find methods and ways to fill resource shortfalls, talent being one of them. That's why we are all here. So with that, I will go ahead and move on. So again, tips from HSI. What I discussed with some of the partners that are on this call, as well as others. For those of you that are interested in federal law enforcement, HSI recommends that you do focus on your resume. That's why we're taking part in this. But they also want you to prepare for the other phases of the hiring process. I know some of the other presenters has discussed that, so I'm not going to go too much into it. However, I wanted to post this information and this picture for you to see and go over, kind of visualize the assessment, the process, and everything that'll go on from here. Now to why we're all here, the federal resume. Think of your federal resume as an assessment of your writing abilities, research skills, and how well you follow instructions. So with that, a quick overview of what we'll cover. We're going to start off with what we won't cover. It's either already been discussed or it's discussed elsewhere, and I don't want to waste your time. We'll go over the federal resume, kind of an overview, and then go into building your federal resume, gathering your information, format, sections, etc. We'll discuss the specialized experience, competencies, and supplement a questionnaire and what is meant by all that. We'll go into wordsmithing and adding context to your experience. We will then move into a quick translating into civilian terms. We are not going to have the current opportunities. We have already discussed that. As far as the civilian terms goes, that's for more our military and veteran community. And then we will finish up with some closing tips and additional resources. Every so often, we will pause to handle questions for those particular slides. And then I'll have a longer Q&A at the end of the presentation. Please don't hesitate to hold your questions and ask your questions. I will be more than happy to answer them. And if not me, then someone else. I don't want to miss something that you put into the comments section earlier in the presentation. So again, please hold your questions. Next, please keep your microphones on mute unless you're called on or reading for the group. Finally, again, we're not going to pause at the hour mark because this is only an hour presentation, so we're good. Some things that we won't be covering. I don't want to waste your time with things you may already know or things that I've already have excellent resources to answer. So these are a couple of YouTube videos on USA Jobs and USA Jobs tutorials. If you don't know or follow the USA Jobs YouTube page or channel, please do. I recommend it. They have a lot of really good, solid general information from professionals at OPM to explain what you need to do. Again, these are some useful links. The YouTube channel will be provided at the end. Federal resume, bluff, bottom line up front. All right, your federal resume is your federal job application. It conveys your work history and experience to federal employers. It is used to determine minimum qualifications as well as the best and most qualified candidates. So the page length is specified by the agency. In this case, HSI has a 5-page limit. Other agencies have longer limits. Some agencies don't have any limits. For instance, my resume for this job was 18 pages long. Don't be afraid to put everything you need to. A good rule of thumb for applying to federal jobs, not necessarily with HSI with a page limit, is your resume needs to be as long as it needs to be in order for you to get the job. So up front, everything we'll discuss here is a way of doing things. Like most things, there is no single the way to complete a federal resume. I'm not saying this to scare you. I just want to manage your expectations. Again, some agencies like longer resumes. Some require a resume of a certain length. Again, HSI requires a maximum of 5 pages. This is why I will always refer to the federal application process as a test. It is a test of your research abilities and how well you follow instructions. Other agencies like narratives instead of bullets, but most will accept either. Again, what we will discuss today are best practices that have been shown to work. And by shown to work, I mean everything I'm going to discuss with you here today, I have used personally to be hired twice by the federal government. So it works. The federal resume. It must be written and tailored to the announcement to show specific and relevant accomplishments and information. There is a reason this gets its own slide. I know that when I started this process, I included everything I did when I was in the service or in my previous experience. While much of it was relevant, there was plenty that was not because of the career fields I was looking into. So relevant experience, knowledge, and training is that experience, knowledge, and training that applies to the job you're applying to. If it's not relevant, leave it out. Mostly because many agencies don't care about your physical fitness score, weapons qual, or basic training you attended. HSI, for instance, will want to know that you know a firearm, what your competency level of a firearm is, and that you can qualify with one. So that's where, again, following the instructions for the announcement is important. Federal resume is your first and potentially only impression. It is the best method to market yourself and sell yourself to potential employers. It also must show how you meet the minimum qualifications. Up front, it is not how you think you meet the qualifications, it's how your resume articulates how you meet the qualifications. And don't go for the minimum. You want to be either very highly qualified or best qualified when it comes to the hiring process. Minimum qualifications do not get you hired. It's important to remember if it's not in your resume, it doesn't count. And some things not to include photographs or videos of yourself, as well as any sensitive information, PI or PII. This includes age, date of birth, marital status, protected health information, religious affiliation, social security number, etc. If you include any of this information in your federal resume, you can and probably will be removed from consideration. All right, going on. All right, just by a show of hands or someone come off mic, where could you find information to put in your federal resume? Go ahead and come off mute if someone wants to answer it.
Your evaluations, what you call it, awards for military, schooling, stuff like that.
There you go. Evaluations, decorations. Whoever just spoke, exactly. So this slide is designed mostly for the transition service members and veterans. However, it does include everybody out there, whether you're a military veteran or just someone from the public. All of this information can apply. In addition to your joint service transcript, you can also use your VMET for the veterans out there, your verification of military experience and training. Links will be included at the end of this presentation. Again, evaluations, personnel reviews, college transcripts are a great place. Military course feedback or end of course evaluations for any private training you've done. Your military training records or course syllabus for any training you have done. Military and civilian awards and honors, paid time off awards, things like that, as well as your former job descriptions, position descriptions. Where else? Anybody else think of a place that they could find more information on for their federal resume? No? No one wants to Roger up? All right, no worries. Some other things not to forget. Don't forget your leadership roles in social and civic organizations, volunteer experiences, projects with local schools or programs. If you've got kids and you take part in their winter fair, things like that can be included and should be. Projects that include speaking engagements, maybe writing credits if you have developed an SOP or written an article for a magazine. Um, don't forget any professional or academic challenges and or successes. You want to include everything you can into your federal resume in order to show that you are the best qualified for the position. All right, building your federal resume, the format. Up front, I don't like the USA Jobs Resume Builder because it's not as flexible as using a Word file. Now there are a bunch out there. You can Google or DuckDuckGo resume templates. Ultimately, you want to find a resume format that works for you. Again, USA Jobs Resume Builder is an option. Some agencies and announcements will require that you use the USA Jobs Resume Builder, so it's not something you want to discount completely. OPM, the Office of Personnel Management's website, has an example. And then again, obviously, internet searches for MS Word versions are preferable. If you still need a resume template or an example, feel free to reach out to me following this webinar, and I can send you to the format I use and recommend. Font. Your resume needs to be in black font, Arial Times New Roman or Garamond type of font, and then 11 or 12 point font. So your resume shouldn't have any boxes or tables or colors. You want it to be black only. Read the fine print. Read the fine print. Read the fine print. Some agencies have different requirements like page length, if they accept non-USA Job System resumes, etc. Again, for the purpose of this presentation, HSI and similar federal law enforcement agencies often require that you have a resume of no more than 5 pages. So always pay attention to the fine print. When developing your federal resume, you must include your contact information. I also call this the introduction section, your work experience, your education, any volunteer experience you have, academic awards, achievements, and memberships, as well as 3 references. Don't put references available upon request. I recommend always putting at least 3 because this will enable the hiring agency, if they want to proceed with your onboarding, they can reach out to your references directly and not have to wait on you to get back to them. Federal resume should also include military schools. That includes your organization, location, city and state, dates completed, graduated, as well as a short summary of what you learned, skills, competencies, etc. You should also include professional training. This could include any type of certifications you get. With these, you want to have the sponsoring organization, start and end date, number of hours. Back to certifications, you should include the granting organization, location, city and state, as well as the date or dates the certification is in effect or you earned it. Moving on into contact information. The contact information section or introduction section should include your full name as listed on your records, your address, but be aware that some agencies consider the full street address PII. I recommend only including your state and city unless the announcement says otherwise. You want to include your telephone number. You also want to include an email address. For this, I recommend you get a professional email, especially for those of you that are in college or in the military. Don't use your .mil or .edu. You want to get a civilian email that you can utilize for hiring purposes. That includes, if you have a civilian email, lose the Rockstar email. No 420 Sergeant Rock rules or cutie for you. Make sure it's a professional email that you don't mind a hiring manager seeing. Work experience. Bottom line up front, don't separate military and civilian experience for those of you who are veterans. All experience is professional work experience. You want to highlight your experience, but not make the reader think the experience is only good in the military. It should be reverse chronological order. So begin with your current position and work backwards. What questions? Did I jump forward? I did. Sorry about that. Do I have any questions at this time while we're sitting here, and I want to make sure we're good to go?
I got a question.
Fire away. Who do we have? Michael, go ahead.
So if you have like titles, in the, on your NCOER and stuff like that, that says brigade, battalion, and stuff like that, how do you list that up? Convert those different level, like or DA level type of position that you had in the past.
That is an awesome question, but what I will say is, can I answer it at the end? We actually have a
Okay.
section during this resume development webinar that will answer that question. But no, good
Cool.
question though. And you
All right.
definitely, yeah, you definitely need to know it, because that is one of the things that you must do if you are a transitioning service member or veteran. You must speak in civilian terms. The same thing goes with anybody who is in a specific field, say, coming from the AmeriCorps or Peace Corps. There are certain terminology and speaking styles that those agencies have that don't translate to a federal HR reviewer. So you always want to, you always want to speak in a manner that is acceptable and understood by whoever might be reading. All right. Next.
I have another question if we have.
Go ahead, fire.
Yeah, so I haven't seen the references section on other resumes before. Will that be like in the announcement how exactly they want it formatted, or just like a section at the end with the references in it?
I have not seen a difference or how they want it listed. I will show an example on this presentation, but again, that will come down to what the announcement says. If it doesn't say that, normally announcements will say professional references or someone that can speak on your your trustworthiness, capabilities, things like that.
Got it. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. All right, moving on to your work experience. Your work experience should cover the last 10 years. You can use either bullets of 3 to 4 sentences or narrative paragraphs that clearly explains your experience and how you measure up. If shorter than 10 years, if maybe you're new to the professional field, maybe you graduated high school a couple of years ago, make sure you include any jobs or volunteer activities you participated in while you were in school. If you need to go back farther than 10 years to show you have the qualifications that the announcement is looking for, do so. But again, make sure you are keeping in mind the resume length requirements. Again, you can be in bullet or narrative format. The rule of thumb is you want to figure out a way, what is the best way for you to convey your experience. No one else can do that for you. All right, next. Each position that you list must include the job title. Now, here's to what we were discussing earlier. The job title needs to be in civilian terms, not a military title if you have one. What does this mean? This means no one knows what an NCOIC is. No one knows what an officer of the watch is. They want to know what you did. So were you a first line supervisor? Were you a human resources manager? Were you a logistics manager? Those are the terms that you need to write your job title in. You need to include employer's name and address. Now, this would be the only section of your resume that you could and should use military terms. For instance, 1002nd, oh, sorry about that. 1002nd Transportation Company, Naval Facilities Engineering Systems Command, Bravo 152nd General Support Aviation Battalion. These are titles, all right, of the agency or organization you worked for. So it's understood that this won't necessarily be in civilian terms. Start and end date or present. I recommend that you put month, day, year style format. When you're working with the USA Jobs Resume Builder, you will only be able to input the month and year. But I found that some agencies want all three and will actually remove you from consideration if you do not include all three. So again, that goes back to the pay attention and read the fine print. you need to include the federal, you need to include the average hours per week you work. For the purposes of the federal government, full-time equals 52 weeks of 35 to 40 hours a week. So that is what is considered full-time for federal employment. You will want to include your federal grade, step, or salary wage earned. I put annual here just because it's an easier thing to deal with. It's an easier number to deal with than having to break it down by weeks and days or pay periods. What you do want to do is whatever you use in one section, you want to use in all sections. So if you were working part-time in one section and only made such and such amount a month, 50K a year, you don't want to, in another section, say you made $2,000 a month. So you want to be consistent across your entire resume. You also want to include your supervisor's name, phone number, and whether or not they can or should be contacted. Don't be afraid to answer no as far as your supervisor's name and your supervisor's name and phone number. Don't be afraid to put no. Some people and people will understand if your current supervisor shouldn't be contacted because maybe, let's be honest, some corporations, agencies, and personnel and supervisors will actually kind of jam you up if they know you're looking for another job. So that's understood. Where you will come in, where you will find problems is if all of your supervisors should not be contacted. That's where some agencies will kind of, or some reviewers will have their eyebrow raised and wonder why. But so long as you can answer no and be prepared to answer why, you should be good to go. So don't be afraid to put no in that okay to contact your last supervisor. This is an example of a full-time federal position. Yes, it was mine, so it's exactly what I did and when. This includes the agency, the location, the dates, my salary, the hours worked per week, my what they call Hollywood title, as well as my actual title, position description, as well as my pay plan, my series, my grade, and my step. Again, this is a federal position. So one thing those of you who are veterans and transitioning service members need to understand, the military is not considered federal employment for the purposes of resume development. So make sure if you're an active duty military or this is an active duty military experience, this is a federal position, that statement should not be there. And then include your supervisor, their number, as well as if it's okay to contact them. This is another example for those of you who might be in the National Guard, full-time active duty. Full-time active duty. You'll see on here, in this particular position, I was a brigade S1. However, no one on the civilian side would know what a S1 is. So what is that? Ultimately, I was the human resources director. I also include an 04, this statement of 04 position, which was a GS-13 equivalent. And that is to help the HR reviewer kind of understand more of what I did and where I did it. That is not a requirement. However, if you're looking for what your grade or rank equivalency is, you can reach out to me after this presentation. Again, notice that I don't have this is a federal position underneath this title. Again, because the active duty military is not considered a federal employee when it comes to hiring purposes. For those that might have part-time or reserve National Guard duties, this is an example that that you can use to show how you add part-time or reserve. Remember, the salary and hours information here is considered typical and should be an average of the hours per week you worked. So overall, through the course of a year, the whole 1 week in a month, 2 weeks out of the year, 15 hours a week is what that equates to. And then you see it was unpaid. For those that have been activated, maybe the Guard or reservists, or even maybe FEMA reservists, make sure you put in your achievements that you were activated for multiple weeks on end or full hours, things like that. It's important that you capture everything within your resume and you get credit for all of your experience. Before we move on, I'm going to take a quick break. Does anybody have any questions about what we've gone over so far? Go ahead and raise your hand if you do. All right. See, I've got no one. Seeing that there are none, I will continue on. Work experience should include what you managed, what you did, and or tasks you completed. All right. I recommend not using the word responsible for, because that's a pretty general cliche term. Um, Describe the scope of your duties, how many employees you supervised, how much money you managed. Accomplishments, awards, and recognition should be the ones that you earned, as well as for details, as well as included details and summary of why you earned those things. Use quantifiable metrics whenever and wherever possible. For instance, you improved X% by Y% within Z months. Solid federal resumes are about three things: detail, detail, and detail. Again, the federal resume is a test. There's a reason I keep bringing this up and saying it again. It is a test on how well and detailed you answer the questions on that. The federal resume is a test. How well and detailed you answer the questions on that test determines whether or not you get hired. But like every test has questions, and understanding those questions can be key to passing or failing that test. For federal resumes, the test questions are made up of four things: specialized experience, competencies, or these are also how your resume will be graded, any required courses, training, or education, as well as the supplemental questionnaire selections that accurately describe your training experience and experience carrying out the tasks. Without the required specialized experience as defined in the announcement, it is unlikely that your application will be considered as best qualified and referred to the hiring manager. Specialized experience is a type of work or experience that is directly related and relevant, there's that word again, to the position which you are applying. Your specialized experience should focus on what need you can fill for the organization and make sure you write your experience accordingly. Next, sections in the job announcements that refer to how you will be qualified, how you will be assessed, and evaluation factors and competencies are telling you how your resume will be graded against the competencies the agency is looking for. Now we'll discuss competencies more here in a minute, because there are certain definitions that the federal government uses, and it's important for you as a job seeker to understand what they're asking for. Again, required training courses, if applicable. This would include any special or specific schooling, education course requirements, or certifications. I've seen announcements that require you to have a bachelor's degree, but within that bachelor's degree, they require 24 semester hours in accounting, for instance. And again, finally, the supplemental questionnaire sections. The selections you make within the supplemental questionnaire need to accurately describe your training and experience in carrying out the task. We will now go into each of these in detail so you know what to do and how to write it, as well as what you're looking for. So here is an announcement, example of announcement specialized experience. Most USA Jobs webinars and classes will explain what is meant by the specialized experience. Here are the examples from this particular announcement. Specialized experience includes you must have 1 year of specialized experience equivalent to at least the next lower grade, in this case, GS 11. This means your resume must not only show that you have experience that the agency is looking at within the grade you're applying to, but also the one below it. It's very hard to see. Can you please enlarge? Honestly, there's not a lot of information on this. It's just an example, but no, I cannot enlarge it. Sorry about that. So who was asking? Yeah, so Yuriko, sorry about that. I can't enlarge this, but we will have these slides available at the end of the presentation. So neglecting this fact, this reason, and writing your resume in such a manner that it addresses not only the grade you're applying to, but the next lower grade, is often the reason most people receive the do not meet minimum requirements for this position. I know that's why I did. When I was initially applying for jobs, resume was awesome. People told me my resume was awesome. I'd apply, I'd get referred, I'd get kicked back and said I don't meet the minimum qualifications. Once I started addressing the previous my previous roles and previous positions and levels of responsibility with the same care and detail that I addressed my current position to show that I had the qualifications the agency was looking for, I started getting referred and started getting interviews and ultimately was hired.
Question.
Fire.
So if you go back, can you go back a little bit to your that's previous slide,
Sure. There you go.
the one with the,
Oh, that's not it. There you go.
there you go. So tell me, if I copy the whole, like that first bullet, gathering,
I'm going to stop
analyzing.
you right. I'm going to stop you right there. Do
Okay.
not cut and paste. Do not cut
Okay.
and paste. Do not
Thank
cut
you.
and paste. No worries.
Thank you. Thank you.
Because ultimately, remember what I said. Your resume must reflect your knowledge, training, and experience. Cutting and pasting just shows that you know how to cut and paste. So again, as one of the presenters addressed, no worries. Again, as one of the presenters addressed earlier, most federal agencies, in fact, all that I know of, will have a live person, a live HR specialist review your resume. If they find that you have cut and pasted things from the announcement directly into your resume without context, I do also know some HR managers and reviewers who will remove you from consideration. So the agencies are looking at how well your knowledge, training, and experience reflect what they're looking for, not that you can cut and paste. So we will start off by we'll just do a quick check. So one of the specialized experience that this particular announcement is looking for is preparing presentation, white papers, and reports for personnel at all levels. So I would like everybody to take a couple seconds. Just think about it. What would be a good bullet, do you think? What, from your knowledge, training, and experience, you can also include, but aren't required to include, salary, current salary. Yes. So yeah, what from your experience, how could you write a bullet to show that you have experience doing this? Here's an example I used. Prepared and verbally presented organizational status briefings and reports to organization employees, managers, and executives. What is that? I prepared presentations for personnel at all levels. I utilize, and then go back to it. Utilize Microsoft PowerPoint to develop briefings and Microsoft Word to develop multiple white papers on equipment statuses written to the applicable level of audience. That is the level of detail that is required for each and every one of your bullets. I hear someone come off mute. Go ahead and ask your question. Oh, no, just somebody coming off mute. So again, you must also show you meet the experience for the next lower grade. Back to the 1 year of specialized experience. This is where most people get derailed because they spend all of their time writing to the current position. They neglect to ensure all of their past positions show the applicable growth and qualifications. Just as an example, again, this is a very, very not detailed example, but I hope it explains it. So many announcements will lay out what experience at the next lower level looks like, but many don't. This means you may have to research what experience looks like at that next lower level. The examples here show an example of how to show progression in your resume. For instance, your current position might read rights policies for your organization. Looking back at your most recent past bullet, it needs to have something similar to enforces policies of the organization, and then working back from there. Was there a question? Because we are about to get rolling into some good stuff. So announcement competencies. Your resume will be graded based on how well you meet the required competencies. This usually follows the statement. You will be evaluated on the basis of your level of competency in the following areas. And then they will have a list of competencies below them. This is just an example. some competencies that might be in an announcement. The announcements for HSI and these federal law enforcement will have different ones. However, these are just examples. So looking at these 4 things, this is how your resume will be based. It will be based on how your resume shows that you are adaptable. It will be graded on how well you manage information. It will be graded on how well you show and explain how well you are at problem solving, as well as your level of technical competence. But what does that mean? How are you going to do that? Well, for instance, you need to know the definition. Again, the OPM has a guide called the Mosaic Guide. I don't know what the acronym stands for off the top of my head, but is the main competency guide used by the federal government. All federal agencies consider the definitions the same. So knowing the definition is important to be able to write your experience to the job. For instance, problem solving. Problem solving definition identifies problems, determines accuracy and relevance of information, uses sound judgment to generate and evaluate alternatives, and to make recommendations. So think about it for a second. What would a bullet for problem solving look like? Here's an example. Evaluated business practices, processes devoted to scheduling, as well as an analysis of workflows, value-added impact, and utility derived from cost-benefit analysis. Coordinated with regional IT team, provided guidance and directed development of a regional scheduling system for scheduling of 3 HSDP sites across California. The result, increase in customer service, receiving no negative customer service experience comments while in the position, and the scheduling system being adopted by 2 other EPA regions. This is actually one that I utilized off my resume. That's the level of detail that most federal agencies want to see. Something that I'm neglecting here, and I didn't include on purpose, were certain things like the time frame. How long did it take me to do this? How bad was the situation before? Again, when developing your experiences, you want to include as much context as possible.
Question.
Now, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I got a lot of questions. So, as you build your resume, for example, like the last duty you had, right? And I, briefly put like 2 paragraph or probably 1 paragraph to kind of like overview it, and then list the core competence that you just mentioned, problem solving, forget the other 3. But if I break down my experience through those 4 core competence, explaining it just like how you have it right here on problem solving, is that, good, or what, just looking for a suggestion?
No, so remember what we said earlier. It's what's the best way for you to convey the information to the hiring manager.
Okay.
The examples I am showing you are the best way I found for me to translate and articulate my experience as a hiring manager. But if you find a different way, if you, for instance, maybe like the full paragraph narrative per experience, rock it. It's however you can convey your knowledge, training, experience to the hiring manager and have them understand it and be able to see that you do in fact qualify for the position.
Got it.
Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Awesome. All right, moving on. The next thing, supplemental questionnaires. They're found on most most announcements will have a supplemental questionnaire that you have to fill out before actually submitting your application to the agency. Most announcements will have the ability to review or preview the supplemental questionnaire questions. These are just a couple of examples of announcements that I look through. They are different. And as well as so are the supplemental questionnaires. So what we're going to go through here are some examples taken from USA Jobs. Here's another example of how to apply and how to preview the supplemental questionnaire. And then here are some examples of questions that you will be answering. Some of them, like this, they want to know what you've done within some particular skill set. For instance, project management. What do you know? Remember what I said about test? Again, this one here wants to know what specific you have done. Do you have experience in strategic planning, budgeting, benchmarking, process management? Again, these questions are from a specific announcement, so they will be different. And then let's see, that's right. So here's another one. Here's the big one that a lot of people have seen as a general one. Again, there are several different ways that a supplemental questionnaire will ask you about your experience. Some will ask you to input examples, other will ask for dates and job titles. You have to include everything that the announcement and supplemental questionnaire is asking for in your resume. This is why the supplemental questionnaire is also called a self-assessment. This is where you get to select how well you think you qualify for the job. So I want to check a quick myth here for a second. By a quick show of hands, who has heard that no matter what, you should always choose expert or the highest rating possible during your supplemental questionnaire? I got 1, 3, 4. All right. This is getting up there. 4, 5. Well, it is a myth to always select expert for everything. If you inflate your qualifications and or experience, for instance, your resume doesn't support the answers on your supplemental questionnaire, you may be removed from consideration for the position. Again, your self-assessment, your supplemental questionnaire answers must be shown in your resume. Any questions at this time? I see a couple hands up. Nothing, or is just haven't put them down yet? All right. Well, I will lower all hands. There we go. Oh, I didn't want to do that. I just blanked out on my slide. So, an example supplemental questionnaire question, right? They want to know researching, analyzing, developing reports, data tools, and providing training and leadership. So from here, we're going to go over an example of what should be reflected in your resume based on your self-assessment selection. Again, this isn't the only way to do it, nor is it the only format the questions come in. Bottom line, no matter what the supplemental questionnaire is asking for, your resume must reflect the answer you select. So let's start thinking about this question. Researching, analyzing, and developing reports, data tools, and providing training and leadership. So I'll give everybody a second to think about that. All right, seconds up. All right, so an example answer to the supplemental questionnaire would be, I have performed this task as a regular part of my job independently and usually without review by my supervisor or senior employee. All right, that's the selection you make on your supplemental questionnaire. But what would a resume bullet look like to show and prove that you have that level of experience? Here's an example. Developed in-depth reports on current operations using Microsoft Access, Microsoft Excel, and online organizational databases. Research included current status, upcoming changes, and recommendations. Updated and trained leadership based on findings. Right? Does that more or less hit all of that information? Could be some, there are some things missing that could be included to be better. Maybe a status on without need for review, little things like that. Another answer. So we want to do the big answer, right? We want to say we're an expert. This task has been a major part of my work. I'm highly skilled at performing this task, and a supervisor or trained others in performance of this task, and or others have consulted me as an expert for assistance. Well, again, you're going to have to get long. You're going to have to get complex and include a lot of context. Do you notice how these examples are getting longer and longer? That's what detail looks like. For this example, I did leave out some things that would make the bullet even stronger. If anybody would like to come off of mute, and what do you think could be added to this bullet to give it more weight? No one? No one, no one, no one? All right. Well, let's look. Let's look. Conducted continuous research on operational readiness activities. Well, what does continuous mean? Does it mean daily? Does it mean monthly? Does it mean weekly? That could be included. Use online data systems to develop weekly reports, right? What systems? Name drop. Organizational leadership routinely enacts recommendations from reports and regularly requests me by name. So how regularly? What's regularly? Is that weekly, monthly, yearly? Supervisors at all levels seek me out for advice and counsel on operational readiness issues. How often? Do they do it again, daily, monthly? Things like that can add context and strength to your federal resume. All right, supplemental questionnaire. I don't know how better to foot stomp this, but maybe this. Okay, if you're not sure, select the next lower choice. That way, if your HR reviewer sees you are more qualified than what you have put down, they will increase your rating. But again, do not overinflate your self-assessment. Overinflating your self-assessment could cause you to be removed from consideration. Next, wordsmithing your experiences, going into trying to develop and put context into your resume. Your experience sections need to paint a clear picture about how, when, and where you have the experience and meet the qualifications the agency is looking for. For those of you military experience or senior experience, think implied versus specified. You must specify everything, even if the things you believe might be in the implied category. All right. Don't just include how, when, and where, but also the skill set used. Don't just describe what you did as a duty or responsibility, but also if you used Microsoft Office suite software such as Excel, PowerPoint, spreadsheets, etc. Maybe you used another skill set such as verbal communication that you used while being responsible for directing incoming calls or stepping in to represent your supervisor. Written communication examples should state that written skills include, for example, any communication sent via email, memorandum, things that you wrote. Use plain civilian language, avoid jargon. By jargon, it's everybody's got it, no matter what, whether you're in the military, whether you're in a civilian agency or corporate setting. There's always those terminologies, acronyms that only apply to that one agency and no one else, which goes into the final bullet. Spell out acronyms once and use them sparingly. All right, wordsmithing. Make sure you state the facts, but don't exaggerate. But also, this isn't a place for humility. Be honest and accurate. Describe your specific duties, the size of the organization, etc. Describe how, where, and when you demonstrated the required specialized experience. You need to define your role. Did you work on your own as part of a team, as a supervisor? Did you assist with other functions? And if you assisted, what specifically did you do? Did you manage supervisors? Go beyond just listing your job responsibilities by using accomplishments to highlight the result of your work experience. Again, avoid militarisms. I call jargon militarisms when describing your duties. Use civilian terms when describing your organization. For instance, brigade might be described as an organization of over 2,000 personnel. Also, you can utilize agencies, directorates, office, etc. Avoid military-specific terms like battalion, squadron, troop. And again, did I mention, avoid militarisms when describing what you did. But how do you do this? Well, one way to make sure your resume reflects how, where, and when you performed at the professional level you worked at is by utilizing either the PAR, STAR, or CCAR methods as a template to write your experience. Just a note, the CCAR method is recommended for senior SES resumes. I'm not going to get into that one today because we're working on lower level. Your resume should paint a clear picture of whether or not you were a doer or a policymaker. Your bullets and narratives need to show that you have entry, middle, senior, or executive level experience, depending on the announcement. So not only is using the PAR or STAR methods a good habit to get into when writing your resume, it will also be utilized during an interview. If anybody out there has heard of the behavioral interview questions, that is based on the STAR method. So if you're good at writing the STAR method, you probably will be able to learn how to speak it. This is just an example of the PAR method. STAR method can be found online. Just Google STAR method. But for instance, writing your experience bullets using the PAR method: problem, situation, or issue sets the context; action, what you did, the steps you took, and the results. It's a quick, down and dirty way to explain in clear detail what you did. I strongly recommend listing college education, military education, certifications, and other training separately. You need to pay attention to the announcement. Understand whether education will be a major factor or not in being qualified. Don't shortchange yourself because you don't have a full degree yet. Many jobs are looking for experience and transferable skills that are communicated in your resume, and education may not be one of them. Although it is always good to address education on your resume, you need to be conscientious of whether or not that will be a deciding factor or not, so you don't have to be as detailed if it is not. For those that may have a GED, or you went to high school within 10 years, consider listing your achieved GPA if it's above 3.0. I know someone spoke earlier, one of the representatives spoke earlier, that if you have higher than 3.0, that could actually help your resume during the hiring process. Volunteer experience or unpaid experience is another solid thing to include within your resume. It can be work done through the national service programs such as Peace Corps or AmeriCorps, working for community-based philanthropic organizations or social organizations, churches, schools, etc. Adding volunteer experience helps build critical competencies, knowledge, and skills, and helps demonstrate how your experience within those competencies within the volunteer experience you have. It can also provide valuable training experience that translates directly to paid employment. When building your resume, volunteer experience should include organization, name, address, exact dates, number of hours per week you worked, brief description of your duties, identify major roles, responsibilities, and accomplishments, and include your supervisor, the supervisor name and phone number or email. Kind of looks familiar, doesn't it? Moving on, academic awards is an app. This also includes, academic awards can be included in your education section. However, the awards section adds weight to your experience and achievements. Try to tie any awards you have in your awards section to an experience or experience bullet. Your awards section can include honors received from civilian positions, time off awards, promotions, performance awards, etc. Most resumes will require you to have 3 professional references. Again, that's professional references, and that is the entire slide. Military education for the veterans out there. List any relevant military education or training. That make sure you include the organization, location, city, dates completed or graduated, as well as a short summary of of what you learned, skills, competencies, etc. Basically, the why behind why the agency should care that you took this course. Professional training, like the others, includes your sponsored organization, location, dates completed, graduated, number of hours that the training took, as well as a short summary of why the agency should care that you're including this training in your resume. The same with the certifications. All right, for those of you who are military or veterans, we actually just published a update to this. So the date on this is actually bad. As of last night, we updated our military to civilian translation guide. It's not just good for military, but anybody who maybe has some issues translating what they did into terms that a federal human resources manager might be able to understand. This guide is available online on LinkedIn and Facebook, both of the San Francisco Federal Executive Board pages. If you can't find it or would like to contribute, feel free to email contact@sffeb.dol.gov, and I will email you a copy and include whatever you send in future editions. So as an example, we've all heard it. Your resume must be written in language that the HR resume reviewer understands. It's just automatic to assume that the person reviewing your resume probably has no idea what the job you're applying for is or really what it requires. They only know what they are told to review and how to grade it. This is why you have to clearly state how you meet the qualifications for the position. So some examples here: military experience. There is no such thing as military experience on a federal resume. It's all experience or federal experience. The Army, Navy, and USMC are not federal agencies, but the Department of Defense, Department of the Army, and Department of the Navy are. Your MOS would equate to a career field, specialty, job, duties. And what is a mission if not a project, task, function, or objective? Some more examples. NCOs out there, your managers, team leaders. NCOIC, supervisor, senior team chief, senior technician. The officers out there: project officer, general manager, administrator. Just because I know there are some recon guys out there: data collection, analysis, and survey. Couple more.
Hey, Brock, real quick. I'm sorry to interrupt. We
Fine.
got a 5-minute heads up.
I've got,
before we hit the
and I've
next.
got 4 slides left, so we're good.
Outstanding. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So, bottom line up front: if you are in combat, if you're combat arms focused, special forces, anybody out there, I guarantee most of your experience, if not all of your experience, does translate. It's just a matter of being able to articulate it in a manner that civilian HR reviewers can understand. As you can see here, combat, high stress operations, conflict, highly hazardous conditions. Those are things that any federal agency can understand. So in closing, couple of things. Context matters. Explain what you did, how you did it, and if it made a difference. Only include relevant information. Create one master resume as a foundation and then tailor it for each announcement. So again, every announcement requires you to tailor your announcement for the position you're applying to. I recommend you have everything in one all-inclusive resume that you can then start deleting things from. My master resume, after 24 years in the Army and a year and a half in the federal service, is over 30 pages long. When and if I ever apply to a job, usually it's tailored down and cut down to the 10 to 15 page range. Again, these jobs that you're applying to and that we have advertised here are a limit of 5 pages for your resume. Again, state the facts, do not exaggerate. Avoid jargon and militarisms. Use acronyms sparingly, if at all. Go back as far as you need to. Find a mentor, pick their brain. There are tons of awesome agencies out there. I volunteer through Veterati, but there are Hire Heroes US. There are many, many, many mentorship organizations out there that you can be part of. Ultimately, your resume must be clear. Must be clear on how your experience, knowledge, and training meet the requirements that the agency is looking for. Some additional resources: OPM published videos online and on YouTube. Link to your joint service transcript, VMET, information on veterans preference and veterans special hiring authorities. If you do not know they are different, they are. Make sure you understand what the differences what the differences are, because it could mean the difference between being hired and not. Several Department of Energy resume guide, FBI resume guide, as well as the USA Jobs channel on YouTube. This here is my contact information, as well as information on the Veterans Federal Employment Collaborative, both on LinkedIn and Facebook. Please feel free to email me with any questions we didn't answer, suggestions you would like to make for future webinars, additions to our military to civilian translation guide, and if you would like a Word template of the federal resume that I use and recommend. That is the end of my presentation. How can I help you or answer questions at this time in the 35 seconds we have left?
Will you provide an example resume? I think you said earlier in your slides.
So an example resume, no, because I don't want people cutting and pasting off of my resume into their stuff. But I will provide you with a template, which has basically breaks down in detail all this information that we have gone over on this presentation, actually within a resume, as well as notes. And I also included kind of a checklist at the end on the second page or the third page that you can do kind of a self-review of your resume as you're working it. So fire off a email to me, and I will send that out. I believe Sarah has a list of the emails of everybody who registered, and I will send it out to them. Send it out to you all at the end of this. Cool.
Thank you.
Brock,
What else?
two questions, two things.
Fire.
Thank you for the class. That was very in-depth. Number
And
two,
that was only half of it.
yeah. And then number two, I'm gonna add you on my LinkedIn as a network. So please.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Is there anybody else, any questions we have now or anything I can answer? If not, like I said, I'm available at all times, pretty much on LinkedIn, Facebook. Through Facebook, we have pages on both. Please feel free to reach out to me, and I will hand this back off to Sam and Sarah.
All right, thank you, sir. Well done. I actually learned to keep a few things, and I've been in the federal service since going on 15 years. So thank you for that, Brock.
Careful, you're dating yourself.
Yeah, no doubt.